The Nice House on the Lake, issue 4, James Tynion the Fourth with Alvaro Martinez on the art.
Mhm.
Obviously, this has been a very exciting book since it started. I think
This one takes a turn.
sure, yeah.
Yeah.
I think you were missing issue 3. I mean, I won't
Yeah.
reveal what I thought of this one yet, but issue 3 was my favorite so far.
Okay.
Up until that point, I really loved issue 3. And in this issue, do you happen to know which character we're focusing on in this issue?
This is the comedian.
The comedian. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
I don't know who issue 3 was though. I think I know the character's name and I recognize him. He's the map guy now. I don't know what his symbol was though.
That's fine. I don't remember that either.
But this guy I know is the comedian because that's how he kicks this off. And now I have to go back and look at the other issues to see if we can tie their symbol to their introduction.
Sure.
Yeah.
So the comedian, like the main part of the start of this, which is the flashback where he's talking about, I mean, he's in the future, but he's talking about how he first met Walter. It's basically the idea is that he's a bit of a joker, he's a bit of an idiot, but he's actually very observant and he's a bit smarter than people give him credit for. He picks up in things. And ultimately, this issue is him picking up on something. There's a rule that he picks up on by the end of this issue, which is a pretty big deal. So this issue, from a mechanical point of view, from like an in-world rules point of view, is like, okay, we've heard before that if they need supplies, they need food, that
the boxes just show up.
They'll get it, right? Well, we don't know about the boxes yet. This is something that just comes up in this issue.
Oh, that's right. See, I read 3 and 4 back to back.
Sure. Yeah. But so we knew that like it had been implied that they would never want for anything, right? They'd always get stuff. But obviously they don't know exactly how that's working. We immediately jump to he's going to have it just magically appear because Right. But this issue makes it clear that if they write down a list out of a notepad that's provided, those things will just appear next day. If they want something that's privately for one person, that's just addressed to them, then they can just take their own bit of paper and put their name and they can ask for their own things. And we get some examples of this, mostly is food, right? There's a couple of funny items, like a fleshlight at one point.
It says, don't judge.
Yeah.
That cracked me up.
But this is day 27. They've kind of learned this by now. Obviously, there was a bit of trial and error, you assume, as they were learning how to do this. And there's some rules that they bring up as they're talking about it, which is if they try and watch the porch where these boxes appear, they won't come. They don't come until no one's looking. So that's established in this issue, which is an interesting little detail. And the other thing here is that they have to be specific, and this issue kind of explores where they're at through what they're asking for and that kind of thing. So our comedian character is kind of going around asking everyone like what they're doing, but mainly if they remember how they arrived here. Like, did they fly to this airport, that airport? Did you drive up from here? And they're all being kind of cagey. Vague. I think I flew. I hate long drives, so I didn't do that. Or
that was the part that kept being brought up. Is like they couldn't remember if they flew or drove. And I was like, well, that's a pretty crucial, like, that's something you don't forget.
Yeah, it's kind of a big deal. And then there's the one character, who Molly, I think it is, yeah, who is being really down and keeps asking if her package has arrived yet. And they're saying, no, nothing today. And everyone else seems to be getting theirs. So there's kind of a mystery as to what she's asking for. Maybe there's a rule to say that, you can't have that particular thing. So that's going on. And there's some fun jokes here where the comedian gets like a ridiculous zebra cowboy hat.
He's just as Ferris Bueller at one point.
Yes, fair, yeah.
There's that. And when you look, like he's asked for like ridiculously expensive booze. Action Comics 1, Detective 27.
Yeah. There's some really funny stuff on those lists.
And they're there, and like Fabergé eggs, and like you see his room at the beginning, and it's just littered with all this stuff.
And he's kind of become this guy who takes the boxes around and gives it to people. Yep. In fact, later on, he's clearly asked for a uniform.
Yep.
Because he's walking around
the delivery man.
Yeah, he's walking around in a postman's outfit. But he goes on the second or third day here, day 29, and he goes to Molly's door, or it's even, I think it's actually this other woman's door who's just staying with Molly.
Because she's been inconsolable since they've been there.
Yeah, and she's getting worse and worse the more these packages don't arrive. And the other woman says, "Hey, is there anything there for Molly?" And he's like, "No, sorry." And she says that she's even staying with Molly because she's even a little bit concerned of what might happen if she's alone. And he's like, "Wait, that bad?" So it kind of raises this, it raises that idea, the idea that she might self-harm because of how she's feeling. And, and he notices, and again, this plays into what was set up at the start, is that he's played as a goofball, but he does pick up in things. He's the one that's asking these questions, and he notices, the map guy's map, right? He sees the house, but he also sees this mysterious building that this guy clearly did not tell anyone about, right? And then he runs into Molly again the next day, and she's like, "Nope, didn't come, did it?" And she's like, "Nope." And he's like, "Yeah, I figured." And she collapses a little bit, and she's like, "Hey, I've got the list for tomorrow." And he's like, "Do you really want to know what it is that I've asked for?" And he's like, "Yeah, sure." He's like, "Well, you can look at it. I've already written it. It's not like it matters." And there's a couple of examples of different things I've asked for. Some of them are quite funny. And then you get to hers, and it just lists them by day what it is. And it's Cameron, and then there's a full name. And it's like, "My husband, Cameron." And she's basically asking for a husband. And then after about 10 days of not getting him, right, of just not appearing, it's a handgun.
Yep.
Which is notable, because if you remember last issue 3, in fact you just read it, so you should remember this, is that some of the characters found an armory in the library. So there is guns that are there if they really want to find them. But and then it's rope, and then the last 10 days are straight razor. It's super dark. It's really depressing, and the comedian character's looking at this, and he's sort of obsessing over it. And we see him grab a bit of paper himself, and sure enough, the next day he goes to get the packages, and it's there for him. It's been delivered because it was in his name. And he sees Walter watching from the forest, and he just looks out of it, and Walter's got that weird effect where his face is all split up and all that.
His face. And
he's like, "You could have just told us the rules, man." And just what he walks inside, it's nothing. He doesn't even act freaked out. Because this is, 20, 30 days into this, right? 29, 30 days into this. He's clearly used to this idea of Walter just sort of skulking around and maybe watching from time to time. But he goes back in, and he makes a kind of a... Well, actually, that's not quite yet. He goes to Molly first and gives her the razor.
Right.
And she's like, "This is yours." "Yeah, I asked for it for you." And explains that you're hurting really bad, and you wanted at least to feel like you had the choice to do this, but Walter wasn't giving you the choice to do this. Even as bad as this is, and as much as I don't want you to do this, as much as this shouldn't be what you do, he gives her this pep talk and ultimately says, "Look, I've got something that I really need to show everyone, but I kind of need to get that back in order to show you." And it sort of gives a bit of a cliffhanger there. So, okay, what's he going to do with it? And then it's set up throughout the issue that the others have planned this big meal, and they've all worked really hard on it, or at least the one character, Ray, has worked hard on it. And they're all having this big meal, and in walks the comedian with this razor blade. And he raises some interesting points that no one can remember how they got here, right? Everyone's very vague on it, which raises some questions. Did they actually physically travel here? As I think a good point that one should maybe asking. Is this all in their collective heads, for example, is another question. But he then says, because he's got blood in his wrist, and I think at this point, most of us reading this figure know what he's about to say. The rule that he's discovered, that there's something that fundamentally they cannot do. And there's a page, the panel's from behind, so it's not too violent, but you see kind of a spray of blood. He tries to slit his own throat. And the end of the issue is him looking down at them, saying, "We can't die, he won't let us, so we have to learn how to live." But one of the other things that he brings up before he makes his conclusion is that, hey, map guy over here found a building, and he never told any of us about it. Do you know what this is? I hate to boil it down like this, but this is basically from Lost. This is we either live together or we die alone.
Together, die alone.
Yeah, that's what that's ultimately boiled down to, but in a really dark, sick kind of way.
Yeah.
Really good.
It is. Well, and it raises questions because the first time we see some of the characters in their intros, they are maimed. So something has happened, in the future.
Yeah, and that's what you mean. In the future, it looks like they can be hurt. Yeah.
Right. So something happens. It's also making me, because the comedian keeps bringing up aliens, and they're like, don't say that, and he's leaning really into the aliens, and he goes, don't say the A word in the kitchen, and all this other stuff. So as the time goes by, they're starting to question things, and what exactly is Walter, and what exactly is going on here. Is he an alien? Is he? And it just makes me, with Tynion and stuff, it almost makes you wonder if this is like a philosophical statement on choice and free will, and and what does Walter actually represent in that term? Is this his take on God, big G God?
I mean, we've definitely talked about that before. I mean, I think all these themes are definitely there. I mean, I think it's far too early in this story to even begin to.
I mean, we're a quarter way through, right? Because it's 12 issues.
Yeah, but we're taking a massive break after issue 6, like which was planned. I feel like right now, like this is making me question, like, are they supposed to like try and figure out how to break the rules? Like the idea of like him picking someone who is disobservant, who might figure things out, like. Is he there just so that they all learn to like work together because that's the message he's giving them right now? Or is there a longer end game here? Is the reason why things have broken down in the future, is that because they did something they weren't supposed to do? Or is it because they have rebelled and did something that Walter was expecting or hoping they were going to do at some point?
Right, like he's leading them to a certain destination. And yeah, I don't know. And it also is interesting who Walter is to each of them, because reading 3 and 4 back to back, Walter's a very different friend to, is it Steven, the book guy, than he is to the comedian. Like, it feels like the book guy was a lot closer to Walter than he was. So what does that mean in the grand scheme of things? Because, like, did Walter want the comedian to piece this together as he's doing it, and that's why he indulged his every whim, all the stuff that he wanted, Or is this throwing a wrench into things? Him seemingly not to care, but he was chosen because he pieces things together.
I don't think we can avoid not point out one of the obvious little, not a plot hole per se,
right?
But if they can't kill themselves, then why wouldn't he give the razor blade to Molly in the first place? Is it because he doesn't want them to learn that they can't kill themselves? Does he just give up because clearly
could just be a game that he's playing with
them? Could be a game he's playing, or is it because he realizes that the comedian's like figuring things out and there's no point in hiding it anymore?
But like, issue 3 made it such a point that Walter cares about his friends. Like, he cares too much. So again, maybe that's why. Maybe because he knew the comedian wasn't going to hurt himself, right? And that Molly would have figured this out before they're supposed to. I don't know. Like, there's a lot of questions at play here.
Yeah, maybe it was just, it had to be day 30 or so before he was willing to let this out the bag.
Right. Well, and also there's in the other house too, in that building that he found, there's a whole, there could be a whole other group of people, right? Because, let's call them the tailies here. If you're bringing up Lost. There was another
I don't think it's the same. I don't think the people in I mean, that's assuming there's multiple. We saw one character last issue, right? Who looked like they were in pain. It looked like they were begging for help, and they were like crying because they weren't being heard or seen by our main character. I don't think that suggests to me that they're all living in a house like this group are. If there is a group of them,
but I was just, for lack of a better term, but. There was someone that was referenced earlier. His name was Reg. And that's who he thought that he heard. And then we don't know if that is Reg. We just know it's another person that's banging that knows who the book guy was. You know what I mean? So what's going on in that building there's something else going on there too. You know, so
I've not. It's been a month since I read issue 3, but I'm pretty sure we knew who that character was that was buying inside that building.
I don't have it on my.
At the very least, it was heavily implied that
right.
it was.
So like,
it was the character. It was the friend who didn't come. It was the friend who either turned it down or whatever, or wasn't invited.
Right. There's significance to who it was, and so, but again, because the whole point was that Walter cares about his friends. So that was the main theme that I took from 3.
Well,
where
he cares about them until he traps some of them in this weird prison.
How do we know this is not a form of him caring in a twisted sense of, you know what I mean? Because like you said, he didn't give it to Molly, knowing what she wanted to do, because he knows their intent of giving them stuff.
I mean, no, you might be right, but like nothing about that ending to issue 3 suggested anything but sinister. Nothing about that felt positive.
No, I'm not saying it is positive.
Yeah,
I'm just saying there's something in that building going on as well that I'm sure,
So your point here is that there's something else going on in that other building.
like when you're talking about, like, he wouldn't have let the map guy get there, right? Because if he's watching, like, the comedian has noticed him, I'm just putting that out there to play into your, maybe it's a timing thing, like, I don't know. But there seems to be a sense of care to him that, there's a lot going on here.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to. Obviously, not all of these theories are going to lead to something, and some of them will be completely wrong. Because I imagine that, especially end of issue 6, I assume is going to have a big cliffhanger that's going to reveal something huge that's going to completely shake everything up, which is nice. But I think right now, what I'm loving about this story is last issue was very much a character who started to problem solve. It was a character who tried to figure out what the boundaries of their map was. Like, where is the edge of where we can go? And that led to this discovery, which had its whole host of what the hell's going on here, mystery, monolith style. And then this issue, you have a character who's picking up on more social things, like more what are the rules of what they can and cannot do, some of the clues that suggest maybe how they've been manipulated, and they just might in some ways be the person that helps keep them together and sort of build forward into something that's helpful. So I like the problem solving. I'm always down for figuring out what the rules are. So the fact that the characters are kind of piecing these things together is very neat to me, and it appeals to me in a lot of ways. So very curious to see how they all click together. But obviously the art is very, very good.
So that's what it was. So I just had to look back up thing. Sam came last minute and replaced Reg.
Okay.
Because they made a big deal that him and his partner were there, and they were kind of last minute. So what if Reg showed up and now he's just being kept in that house, in that building? Because he's, you know what I mean?
Sure. I just kind of read it as like Walter, because he didn't come, took him and prisoned him there. I mean, maybe it is that he tried to show up late. Maybe he tried to surprise them or something. Right. I don't know.
Right.
So, cool. That could be a circumstantial thing. But yeah, that final page, it's hard to sort of undersell that final page and the brutality of it, and just kind of we're going to have to be better than this, because otherwise we're going to go mad and never figure anything out. So yeah, what are you giving Nice House by the Lake issue 4?
I'm going to give this 8.5.
Yeah, I think I may have to stretch to the 9. Really strong stuff. I think it tells its story really well. And despite the fact that it's hard to remember individual character names, it does a good job of just focusing in on a character or two. In this case, it's the comedian and Molly, but it doesn't, there's enough on its own to make it work in the context of it. So I'm sure this is going to read amazingly as well once you can read it all back to back. And I mean, you can do that right now if you really want to. You can just go back and read the issues, but
right.
But Yeah, but it's doing a really good job of still working really well as a monthly comic, despite the fact that it's impossible to remember who everyone is at the drop of a hat, because it's just impossible. Unless you've reread them so much at this point that you've really ingrained it into your brain. But, yeah, 9 out of 10 for me. Really good stuff. I love the problem solving.